Keep watching her. She's gonna signal you.
No?
Yeah.
Oh. Hey everybody, okay, small technical delay there. We are now underway. We've got a lot of fun things to talk about. It is Saturday. We haven't done a Saturday stream, maybe ever. I'm not sure if we've done one in past years. Certainly nothing like this.
I've done one every Saturday without you.
Well, people need to be watching those, I guess. Well, I'm Aziz. This is Sean. We have Ashaya over here running production. And we are going to do, as I said, this is kind of a new format for us. One thing we're going to make sure we do is get this out in time in podcast form for those who want to listen to it in podcast form. So we're going to keep this a little shorter than usual. However, for those of you who are here watching live, we're going to go past our normal amount of time. We're going to do about an hour of planned material here, stuff we've planned to talk about, and maybe a few questions. But then after that, we're going to make this officially end, but stay live to take more questions just for you live folks. And just to give you all a little bonus for showing up live, we're going to take questions just from you guys. That'll be at the end, though. So for now, we've got plenty of prepared things to talk about. We checked out the trailers. We've got screenshots. We've got theories. And we've had all week to think about it, which is a different look than, when we start right away on Monday, give you our thoughts, and then we come back with our book to show episode later in the week. But hey, that's been several days since then.
Yeah. Lots of new thoughts develop in my mind.
Yeah, did you have anything you wanted to start with that's in particular percolating in your mind, or should we just dive right in?
We'll dive in and it'll come out as we go. I don't want to derail the flow.
We good. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on Saturday. One of the purposes of doing this on a Saturday, not just the other things I've just listed, but we wanted to make sure some of you guys who couldn't make the other times, especially people that aren't in the U.S. because of the time zones, this gives a lot of people who wanted to join us live an opportunity to do that.
There are people outside the U.S.?
I thought all of us Americans were supposed to believe that only America was the only country. We're not those kind of Americans.
It's easier to be the greatest if you're the only one.
That's true. Okay, so a couple of details on this episode. The episode is called The Queen's Justice. And like always, we expect that to have multiple meanings. The official description is different than the first official description. It's expanded from what we were first told. It's Daenerys holds court. Tyrion backchannels. Cersei returns a gift. Jaime learns from his mistakes. The Tyrion backchannels line was not in the official release, the first official release. It was not on IMDb, but this is an official synopsis. Hat tip to Watchers on the Wall for keeping us up to date on that. Watchers on the Wall is pretty much our only source for news. There's other news sites out there covering Game of Thrones, but I don't really see a lot of reason to go elsewhere, to be honest. The episode is directed by Mark Mylod, who also did the previous episode, Stormborn. He also did episodes 3 and 4 in season 5 and episodes 7 and 8 of last year. So this is his third batch of 2. He's done 2 in a row. This will be the third time. I don't know if he's directing any episodes in season 8, but we'll see. This is a 63-minute episode, which will be the longest so far of the season. It's certainly not the longest of the season. When the season's over, there'll have been a 71 and an 81-minute episode. However, episode 4 is only going to be 50 minutes, so that's going to be the shortest ever.
50 minutes. I'm not even going to watch it.
Now, based on the trailers, it seems that... Oh, I'm sorry. We back up a little bit. Because of the tightness of this episode, because we're trying to cover a lot and try to keep it around an hour. And again, remember, we're going to stay after the hour to take questions from you guys. But for this first hour, we're going to not take very many questions. If you have a super chat, if you want to pay money to get a question through during the live stream, we will take care of you there. But we just want to keep it running really quickly. So we're not going to pause for any other questions other than the ones that we've already pre-selected. So based on the trailers, now a lot of times they show you most of what's in the episode in the trailers. I don't mean most of it, I just mean most of the locations. But not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a location that's in the episode that we don't see in trailers. What we haven't seen in trailers for this one is Arya. We haven't seen the Brotherhood. And we haven't seen Bran, but there is hints that Bran will be in this episode. So that's where we'll start. The North. Remember that early trailer, I think it was the second trailer, where Sansa's walking away, and there's the quote that's Littlefinger's talking, and then later in that trailer, she gives her lone wolf speech. Well, Some very astute observers noted that there was, in the very deep background of that shot of Sansa walking away from the weirwood, there looked to be a person sitting. And a person sitting would be Bran in a wheelchair, because this is outdoors and there's just no chair by the weirwood. So, and we know from another trailer shot that Bran gets a wheelchair. So this all fits very well. So this sort of confirms what we had guessed at before, which is that Bran is probably going to show up at Winterfell before Arya. And we predicted, just for story purposes, that they wouldn't do both of those in the same episode. You still feel that way?
I think so. I think it maybe also makes it easier to manage if Jon has already left. The more people you have together, the less intimate the reunion will be. And also, physically, with Bran, it's harder to have a group hug when he's immobilized. So it does make sense to me that Bran will show up and see Sansa. Then later Arya will show up. Maybe Sansa's not even there anymore. Who knows by that time. I can imagine Sansa being slow-rolled, showing up, or maybe running into Jon on the way back, or something like that.
Interesting. And we have definitely a shot of Sansa and Littlefinger together. We have a still of that coming up in a minute here. And I totally agree with you. With Jon being gone, presumably he's already left. I believe we saw him ride out at the end of the episode. I forget exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's... In any case, we expect him to be gone before Bran shows up for the exact reason you said. It makes it a lot simpler for them to work on the story when they have these reunions be one-on-one rather than a whole group of them at once, which is also why it's probably safe to guess that the Brotherhood, if they're even going to show up at Winterfell, which we do expect, that will also maybe be held off for another episode.
Real quick, I want to think for a second. Is anyone still going to be at Winterfell that Bran would know?
Besides Sansa?
Yeah. I can't think of it. He never met Brienne or, many other characters who have showed up there he never met before. Anyone that was there before I think is dead.
It's a good question. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's going to be very unfamiliar to him. That's a great point. Also, what is Mira going to do? That's an open question. Mira's role, we always, for a lot of times you wonder, we always have this fear when a character doesn't have a lot to do, you wonder if they're going to die. But Mira doesn't seem to be in any imminent danger either. I mean, she's just chilling at Winterfell, presumably, or currently at the Wall, maybe going to show up at Winterfell in this episode.
I can't believe I hadn't thought of this till you just now brought it up, but I remember in the past season, or maybe even 2 seasons ago, I was speculating that she might go to find her father.
Yes, yes.
And that could still happen, I suppose.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. They could be like, hey, I'm going to go find my father.
And that might be also part of how it's revealed who Jon really is.
Yeah, that could really work out. Yeah, I totally agree. I wouldn't be confident that Helen Reed is going to show up, but she specifically mentions him in the first scene. She says, I'm Mira Reed, daughter of Helen Reed. They throw his name out there again. Yeah. So I do think that's maybe a slight teaser, a slight clue. So yeah.
And she has strong motivation to find her father, like, never mind just wanting to be with her family, but also to let her know, hey, Jojen's dead,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge reason. I mean...
Never mind rallying of forces.
We would expect him to want to know what's up with his kids, right? But we know that Greywater Watch, his castle, can't receive ravens because it moves. It floats. It's a floating castle. It's one of those it's one of those standard issue bog castles that floats and moves. We all know the type. There's one in our neighborhood. And so that
one has internet, though. They don't need ravens. So.
Which gives the showrunners a little leeway, because they can have it take as long or as little time as they want for Mira to find him. They can say, it could take all the rest of the season, and he won't show up till next season. Yeah. Or it can be, at the finale, or it could be, just a couple episodes from now. They have all kinds of flexibility there. So that's neat. I like that. A lot of possibilities. Okay. Something else that occurred to me that is going on in the North. First of all, something we talked about is that Littlefinger now has maybe a little more leeway to try to work his dirtiness because Jon just threatened him, but now Jon's gone. And if he had plans to manipulate Sansa, well, she's not a pushover by any means. She's already been giving him the hand constantly, like, get out of my face, I'm not interested. Still,
he's got like, a little okay, more fine. He's just leaving her alone now.
And it's important to remember, something that I did to prepare for this episode is to go back and look at the other trailers that we've had so far this year. And that's really important because it helps us narrow down what's still to come. And I'm going to give a little more detail on that later. But we've seen most of the trailer shots of Sansa and Littlefinger, or we will have after this episode, given the trailer shots that reveal they match up with some of the other trailer shots. So, other than like Littlefinger's creeping around the corner shot that we saw in the second trailer, where he just looks like classic Littlefinger peering around a corner, that's one we haven't seen. Oh, maybe we'll see that one in this episode. But after that, since we have Sansa walking away from the tree coming up in this one, I'm not sure what's left. So they're really keeping that close to the chest. They're really hiding that.
On one hand, maybe Littlefinger has more room to make a move if Jon is gone. But on the other hand, kind of analyzing how things are going, a detail that we observed. Like, this is one of those things that after the first or even second or third watching, we didn't quite absorb the potential meaning of this. But now, having thought about it for a few more days, Royce keeps getting lines, right? They keep featuring that character. And he has had ties in his family throughout the season, from literally the first scene of the whole thing.
And he hates the little Lannisters. He's been saying that for a long time, too.
But it makes us wonder why they're choosing to have him be a character with these lines and these big moments, these interactive scenes with a bunch of different characters. He's getting his 2 cents in. Why him? And I think a reason for it might be because if Littlefinger does get killed, it seems like Littlefinger maybe is getting himself into precarious positions here. There's someone to take the role as leader of the Vale and those knights in that army.
I totally agree. It's like a meta prediction. Like we used to predict that Tormund was safe because there's just no other wildlings with names.
Wildlings, right?
Yeah, but as soon as they start bringing in other wildlings, watch out, Tormund. And there's other examples like that. So I completely agree. This is a good theory.
It's added to when you think about the fact that he has reason to not like Littlefinger in the first place. If there is some move against him, he would be behind it. Littlefinger kind of, at best, threatened him. You know, like the nicest you could put it is he gave him a subtle threat of turning Robin against him. So you can see how he might himself, he doesn't seem like the type to do conniving and plotting and politicking. But if conniving and plotting and politicking was going down, he'd be on board for getting rid of Littlefinger.
Yeah, and he's already established himself as someone who's supportive of the North and the older traditions. His son is the one that was killed in the very first scene of Season 1. That's Sir Waymar Royce, the leader of that expedition beyond the Wall. That was him being killed. And also, taking this rabbit hole a little farther, Brienne killed his other son, which might be a problem. Now, I could see the show just kind of glossing over that, or maybe just pretending that Royce isn't aware of who killed his son, that he knows he was a member of the Rainbow Guard.
But that was right after the Spirit Demon killed Stannis.
Or Renly, yeah.
Renly, sorry, yeah. And guards came rushing in, and there's dead Renly with Brienne standing there, and everyone assumed it was her, so she has to defend herself. Her can't run away. But one of those men that ran in was Royce's son.
Yeah, and that's easy to miss because I don't think they gave his name out loud. They definitely put it in the extended material. His name's in the wiki, his name's on the other places, but I don't know if it was ever said out loud. And in the books, it's a much more emotional moment because it's Sir Loras who kills them. He goes mad with grief and slays them because he's like, why weren't you guarding him? And he just goes nuts, and he sort of half blames them. And so it's easy to forget that it was Brienne in the show because it's a much more emotional moment in the books because Brienne's just self-defense and it's against 2 unnamed characters, but in the books it's a little more specific. And I
wonder if after the fact they released it as some material in the world of knowledge that exists, but it wasn't named in the show. I wonder if the writers at this point are maybe unaware that has happened, or B, they're like, why did someone do that?
So I could see Royce not knowing that his son was killed by Brienne and just being... Maybe he's heard a rumor. But that could come up, though. If Sansa's dealing with Royce, they're negotiating, that could come up. Brienne may just come, hey, sorry, it was self-defense, I killed your son, I'm sorry. Like, the not honorable thing to do, kind of approach him and own up to it. I could see something like that happen. Could also see them completely skipping over it.
Would she know that it's his son?
She might not. She should, because they were in the Rainbow Guard together. They were both named the Rainbow Guard. You'd think she would know the names of the other Rainbow Guard. Like, that would be kind of like Meryn Trant not knowing the names of the other Kingsguard or something.
Which, by the way, ironically, you can't say because we don't know their names.
Good point. Tough but fair. So, let's see. Do we have anything else for this section? I think that this is largely unknown. We didn't get a lot. There's no dialogue from the trailers, just a few shots, and really these shots don't tell us much. Sansa standing next to Littlefinger, well, seen that a bunch of times already. And Sansa walking away from the weirwood tree, well, we've talked about that. The implication, I suppose, there, though, is maybe Bran is using the weirwood and Sansa's privy to whatever he's looking up. But that also is just, the possibilities are so limitless with what Bran could be looking at or telling Sansa or...
It was another thought that I had. Let's assume that Littlefinger maybe is in trouble. I've been sort of assuming that Littlefinger had plot armor, and if he died, it wasn't going to be till much later. But let's say he does. And maybe even if he doesn't die, maybe he gets run off, right? I had also been assuming that Littlefinger was going to be the one to reveal to Jon his true identity. I thought that scene in the crypts, that's where that was going to come, but it didn't come. So now I'm reevaluating where Jon will get this information from, maybe from Bran. Maybe Bran, through some vision, will be the one to let Jon know about this.
In fact, it's other than our hope for Howland Reed, I'm not sure there is another way, you know? So, anyway. All right, let's move on. We got to keep going. We're going to go to Dragonstone now, where Jon and Davos are going. Trailers seem to reveal that Jon and Davos are basically going to go in by themselves. They've got some guards with them, but as far as going into the throne room and talking to Dany and all that, it's going to be them. But let's back up, because we sort of expect news of the battle to reach them before Jon and Davos do. Certainly nothing to be super confident about.
News of the sea battle.
Yeah. We definitely have a shot of a rowboat coming ashore, what appears to be Dragonstone, and safe guess that's Theon. Like,
isn't there another shot, not just of a rowboat, but of a swarm of men, a dozen or 20 men on the coast? Maybe a couple boats. It looks to me like people washing up from the shipwrecks. You know,
it could be that. It's kind of ambiguous. We've got two different landings coming. One Jon and Davos, and another is probably Theon. In the earlier trailer, someone is staggering ashore, which definitely doesn't seem like Jon and Davos or anything like that. Like, the person looks like he's been through an ordeal, which obviously that fits Theon super well. And it's really going to be interesting to see whether it comes before or after Jon Davos getting there. Either way, Dany's reaction will be interesting. Tyrion's reaction will be interesting. It's a major setback. We've already discussed it at length. It almost certainly takes the Dornish army off the table entirely. And that's a best-case scenario for Dany's team, because it's possible, I don't think it's likely, but it's possible the Lannisters will leverage their hostages to keep the Dornish on their side rather than keep them out of the war. So it could go even worse for Dany and Tyrion, though I think that's highly unlikely, because your theory about them not wanting to cast or produce any Dornish soldiers as a way to keep the budget in line, I think is a very good theory. So I do expect them to simply just be not involved.
Sometimes I forget about which things I've talked about to who, because I've definitely talked about that a few times, but I can't remember if I had that thought when we did our last podcast.
I believe you did, yeah. I believe you did. And there's definitely a lot of shots of Dany gazing out over the water. She's watching her dragons in one shot. There's a lot of these. We didn't bother grabbing any of these because there's nothing revealing about them. They're beautiful. We could have grabbed them for that reason. But there's also this angry, stating her kind of thesis, which is, I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will. That maybe this is said to Jon and Davos, as maybe they argue about something. Maybe they're like, no, I'm the king. No, I'm the queen. I'm the, that kind of thing. But it could be her frustrated after getting the news of the sea battle loss, and maybe something, I can see that going either way.
It could be more, a lot of times where you put the emphasis on a statement can change what the statement means and the context of it. What she might be saying, that might be something she's saying to Jon, and the emphasis is on the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
Maybe he's saying, look, we have a different battle to fight. I'd like to support you. Maybe we'll bend the knee. I got to talk to my bannerman. She's like, no, you listen. I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will.
Yeah, and if we go back to the earlier trailers, we have Jon making a plea, say our families have fought together for X hundred years, etc., fought against a common enemy. That seems to be him talking to Daenerys, especially since it doesn't appear to be him talking to the Northern Lord, since he's left the North now. There's a small chance it was that, although that would have been maybe that's kind of already happened. So it seems very likely that he's saying that to Dany, and that's delivered calmly and more of a like, hey, let's work together. But if Dany's in a bad mood, if she's angry, if she's like, no, I want to exert my authority, she could demand that the Vale, the North, come help her fight at King's Landing. Remember, she wanted a native army to besiege King's Landing. Mm-hmm. She may not have a native army anymore. She definitely has lost the Dornish. She's going to lose the Tyrells, and the Reach. Whether that happens in this next episode is up in the air. But if that happens soon, before this meeting, she's reduced to no native armies, and then her plan falls apart to besiege it with a native army. So she might demand that Jon send his army south, which he's gonna be like, what? I can't send my army south. Did you hear what I said? The north, blah blah blah. That won't work. So. And maybe he'll be like, well, you send your dragons north, and maybe we'll send you some men.
Here's the thought, by the way. Maybe that's a way, some of these other thoughts we've had, maybe Jon will send just the Knights of the Vale.
That's possible.
And Littlefinger and or Royce can go with them, and you guys fight that battle and come back as soon as you can. In the meantime, I'll rally other troops. We've got Danish dragons coming eventually based on this promise. Maybe that's a compromise he could make that would also be a way to account for why they're featuring this Royce character. Maybe he could be a leader on the battlefield.
That's true. Yeah, and like I said, we have very few scenes later in the season from the trailers. Well, it's kind of what I figured out. We've got some shots of Jon doing his thing in the north, like running around with Beric and everybody, and White's running around. We've got that, and we've got one shot of the Night King. But for the most part, there's not, like I said, there's just not a lot of trailer shots that appear to be late in the season. So yeah, there's a lot of room for other battles that we, or little shots, maybe smaller engagements.
As that's doing that, by the way, it's another way maybe for Jon to assert himself with Littlefinger after their little confrontation. If he goes back and makes this announcement, like he does every time without telling anyone what any of his plans are, just drops a bomb on everyone. And he's like, all right, everyone, Dany's going to help us, but first, Littlefinger, you're going to take your army down to help her. And it would be hard for him to argue against that,
Yeah. So we have no trailer shots of Highgarden. That's at least we might have a trailer shot of Highgarden. It's tricky. We've got a shot later of Jaime that we're not sure where it takes place, and that's maybe it's after taking Highgarden. It's kind of a stretch for that to be in this episode, but it could be. We have some shots of some soldiers, but I'm confident that those are not Tyrell soldiers. They are wearing red and they're standing on battlements. They really look like they're archers, and we see other shots of these same archers engaging with the Unsullied. So it seems very likely those are from Casterly Rock. And we're going to talk about Casterly Rock later. But anyway, so we were trying to get at whether the possibility of this Tyrell situation being resolved before Jon gets there, because that would be huge. But there's really no way to know what the order of things are going to be in. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Okay, Shay's going to pull up an image here of Varys and Melisandre standing outside. There's a lot of interesting shots of Team Dany being outside in this episode. And it's interesting to note that they're wearing different outfits in the inside shots, or in the outside shots versus the inside shots. The inside shots, Dany's got her new black and red, like, badass queenly raiment. Tyrion's all well-garbed, and Missandei's all dressed up. And then there's a few other shots of them outside, and maybe they're showing off the dragons to Jon and Davos. That seems likely. They'd want to show Jon the dragons, right?
Yeah.
That's obviously setting up the possibility that the dragon is, like, friendly to Jon, or something huge like that. Something very meaningful. But there's nothing in the trailer that suggests that happened. It's only our own inference. As likely as it seems, it may not happen.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Now, this Varys and Melisandre action is interesting because, of course, we wonder about what their deal is, whether they're going to have problems with each other. Well, I don't expect Melisandre to have problems with Varys, but the other way around could be there. And what happens if Daenerys asks Melisandre about Jon? And what happens if Jon and Davos tell on Melisandre regarding Shireen? Dany wouldn't be happy with that. But really tough. It's hard
There's
to
already
see.
been other things that you wouldn't think Dany would be happy with, but she's still teamed up with the Dornish, even though they killed Myrcella. So
Exactly. And this one maybe slides under the radar a bit, but I don't expect Davos to have a problem with Tyrion, but Davos' son was killed by wildfire.
Yeah.
And that was Tyrion's gig there. So there's a chance that there's a little to do, but I expect him to be more bothered by Melisandre's presence if she doesn't go off and hide, And she might be like, Your Grace, I shouldn't be around while they're here. We have a little history. Maybe I should just stay off screen.
I will say, so far, they seem to be presenting Melisandre as having grown a little bit, Mm-hmm. And I think that she might understand the nature of the politics involved, whatever her beliefs, which she's maybe questioning already, or her interpretations of them. She might see, okay, there's some other strong characters. They have some legit opinions. I don't want to mess things up. Things are on track to where I want. Let me go find the Brotherhood Without Banners. Let me go find that Arya girl. I wonder if that Gendry guy's still out there somewhere. She's got other things to work on.
Well, right in line with what you're saying, I grabbed some quotes from Carice Van Houten herself, and the actress who plays Melisandre, and she weighs in an interview with Hollywood Reporter. There's some untied knots in some of these stories, and loose ends with Arya. There's still a few things I think are bound to happen still. She also says she leaves Winterfell more heartbroken for the world than for herself. So it does show that she still does have this as, despite what a lot of people think about her, according to Carice anyway, Melisandre is still devoted to the cause of humanity. As, it just seems hard to grasp sometimes because of all the things she's willing to do, as dirty as she's willing to get her hands in order to get this goal across. She also says she's more realistic and self-aware in that sense. It's as if she can look at herself better now. She doesn't have that fanatic point of view, which is, that's good. Fanatics aren't good. It's not helpful to be a fanatic.
It's worth noting, by the way, again, you look at, it's so easy when you see Melisandre saying, burn this little girl, and they burn this little girl. But she has this bigger picture in mind. And when you hear Dany say, let's lay siege to King's Landing, what do you think that means?
Starving
do you think
children.
Everyone's going to have a party?
Yeah.
Who do you think's going to get fed first? The starving kids or rich Cersei Lannister? Like when Dany wants to lay siege to King's Landing, or anyone wants to wage war, people are going to die. Kids and innocent people are going to die.
And that's a great point, because they're all like, oh, we don't want to burn people with dragonfire. Well, I don't know. If you ask some of them, they'd rather be burned with dragonfire than starve to death. Yeah. To see their kids starve to death. Look at ask Sandor how hard that is to see after the fact. Especially when you're responsible for it. So that, by the way, speaks even more to their military inexperience. You have all these politicians that are trying to come up with a war plan, and they're like, yeah, siege is no big deal. Let's do a siege. That's more friendly than just burning everything. It's like, is it? A couple people commented on our episode bringing that up, and I think it's very astute.
It's potentially more friendly if when a siege starts, the people rebel, or something along that lines, or if the siege is like the first wave, as they prepare for the next wave, or something like that. Like, it's the alternative is also bad. Like, swoop in with dragons and burn everything down. That's also bad. Probably worse because it eliminates a lot of hope. But it also eliminates a lot of suffering. So, again, as I said before, just the idea of wanting to conquer at all, in and of itself, is bad. Maybe in the end, after you conquer and you instill justice, maybe you justify it all. But people don't make that argument for Stannis. You know what I mean? When he burned Shireen at the stake, no one's like, whoa, you don't understand. When he takes over, then he'll install justice, and this one person has to suffer for it. Well, when Dany, these other characters want to wage war, scores, thousands of people suffer for it. Everyone hates Stannis so much,
Yeah, everyone is.
It's just more in our face what he did. So
yes, I agree. Okay, so this is probably what they mean. I don't think there's anything too outstanding to read in the quote, Dany holds court. That seems pretty straightforward, although the possibilities are where it's like, whoa, how this monumental meeting between Jon and Dany is going to go is just a lot of possibilities. So we'll back off on making any more guesses because it's just so wide open, because we've got a lot to cover. But there's another comment that's really important. Tyrion back channels. That's from the description. That's the added part of the description that we didn't have earlier. Well, it's really easy to narrow that down. We already pointed out that it's just Jon and Davos as far as named characters that are showing up. So there's only one person for him to backchannel with, and that's Davos specifically, unless this refers to him backchanneling with letters to some other parts of the kingdom. It's got to be this otherwise. I just don't see
I guess it's also possible that some other character travels with Jon or Davos that they didn't show us, like Royce or Littlefinger or someone else, and maybe Tyrion has some meeting with.
Well, you can actually see them on the walkway walking up, and it's just those two with people. It's like it's not like there wouldn't be a place for this person to be hidden. But I see what you're saying. Like there's maybe something I didn't think of, but it seems very likely that Tyrion and Davos. So what that indicates is that Jon and Dany maybe are butting heads a little bit. You need the two second in commands to kind of, pave the path to an arrangement. Which this is fairly realistic. This sort of thing happens in real life all the time, where outwardly the two heads, the two kind of alphas aren't perfectly getting along, and you need their second in commands to do some deals behind the scenes and present those deals to their, so that the two alphas aren't making the agreement. It's their seconds are making the agreements with their respective alphas, and then there's like, okay, because it's like it's easier to convince Tyrion can convince Dany of something far more easily than Jon can,
and Davos can convince Jon of something, or Sansa can convince Jon of something easier than Dany can.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of possibilities here as well. We have another shot. We have Tyrion outside, standing outside, and this is a different image than of him inside. As I pointed out earlier, they're changing clothes, in this, so it seems that there's likely to be multiple scenes here at Dragonstone, probably all involving Jon, but maybe not. There may be some prior to him getting there, where they're where they could be dealing with the aftermath of the lost battle, and this is with all these shots outside. It certainly leads more to the idea that the dragons are going to be involved. Now, I had just a funny thought that is tangentially related. In the books, Varys and Illyrio kind of wanted to have Viserys invade, only to have the Dothraki to have them be a manufactured threat for their candidate to save the realm from. Ironically, those Dothraki, who are supposed to be a manufactured threat, may turn out to be pretty crucial to actually saving the realm from, say, the White Walkers, and to helping Daenerys kind of get rid of Cersei so that someone who actually cares is in charge. It remains to be seen if Dany's actually going to help the Northern effort, but she's a lot more likely to than Cersei is.
Bringing up Viserys there, you remind me of something I was thinking about Dany, is that she's maybe a little shade of him, maybe a little naive and over eager when she's like, I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will. That sounds like something he would say, right? Probably
Yes.
something he did say.
That's true. So it looks like we got close to 500 people live. Thank you, folks. Remember that if you're here live, we're going to stay after the official ending of this recording to take more questions from you guys. Maybe do a half hour, 45 minutes of that. And that will not make it into the podcast because I don't have time to edit another 2-hour podcast before tomorrow. I've already done that twice this week. And heck, those actually weren't 2 hours. Those were both over 2 hours. But enough of that. We got a lot to cover. You don't need to hear me talk about that. So let's move on. Let's go to King's Landing. We have Euron being cheered. Here's an image. And if you look real closely, Euron is holding his reins in one hand, and he's leading some people with some other reins in his left hand. He's wearing gloves, and he's being cheered. So it seems that Cersei's propaganda was working, that she's correctly painted the others.
Do you have that image?
Yeah.
And
it's on the right side.
Okay, cool.
And
They tell them where it is.
there's you can see in the corner there Yara's face, bloody and beaten. And if we were to show a second, we didn't bother to pull a second image.
No, they're both there.
Oh,
You
she
can
put
see
them
both
both
in the
there.
image? Okay.
Oh, very good. Okay, I'm confused. So you can see Yara in the corner of one of them and Ilaria in the corner of another.
It's the same image.
Oh, you can see them both together?
It's together.
Wow,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to see them together
If you
before.
were to
That's
go to
great.
YouTube, you can see it right now yourself.
Well, we're on a lag. But so this is interesting because, like we talked about, I think we discussed all the permutations of this gift. Like, obviously, Cersei doesn't have to accept it. She can kill one of them. She can kill both of them. Either way,
All three of them that you include?
potentially all three. I'm not sure she's going to give Yara's going to be part of the gift. She easily could be. I kind of think Euron wants to keep her for himself. We were at least spared so far, Yara being put, on the prow of Euron's ship, which was something we were worried about happening. But if she's being led in by foot, that means she's not, she could still walk. So she hasn't been, brutally tortured yet. Hopefully that's not going to happen at all.
That's my closest guess as to gift, is that he's going to present all three of these women.
Mm.
And Cersei's going to say, keep Yara, I don't care about her. I think that's the easiest way for them to have this line without being overly revealing or whatever.
We have a super chat from Justin Duvall. No question, just saying y'all are the best. Thanks. Thank you, Justin. We appreciate it. Again, folks, if you want to get in a question, use super chat. We don't have time to take a lot of questions, but if you want to pay to have a question answered, well, we're not going to say no to that. So feel free. But we have a lot to cover regardless. And so we're still wondering if Cersei is going to actually marry Euron. I'm thinking no. I think she's going to maybe hold him at arm's length a little more, maybe ask for more, maybe just kind of lead him on a little more. But
I think she might agree to it, even if it doesn't happen for episodes and episodes down the road, or things change before it happens. She might agree to it and set a date or whatever, and it's this big thing. And at some point, I think we've seen an image of Cersei on the throne with Qyburn behind her to one side and Euron behind her to the other side.
yes.
So I I don't think they're gonna get married this episode, but she might agree to it this episode. And then over the next few episodes, we see her arguing with Jaime about it and explaining, look, it's just for show. It's not. I don't care about her. I don't love him. I was married to Robert. It didn't stop our relationship, etc., etc.
And also, yeah, there's the other thing is that, again, the order things happen in is huge here. I think, based on a trailer scene, that where Cersei is saying we've struck the first blow, which, by the way, looks like she's going to lose Castle Rock later in the episode, and so much for striking the first blow, because that blow seems worse. Losing your home is probably worse than destroying Dany's navy. So that's going to hurt Cersei and Jaime. But it seems like they get that news before. And I wonder if they get that news ahead, or if they get it just because right when Euron shows up. It would make sense that they wouldn't know until Euron gets there. Like, who's going to have news of that battle in advance of Euron, assuming he goes straight to King's Landing? It's not like there's some faster ship that's going to bolt and get like, this happened, you know. I mean, that could happen. They could explain it in a variety of ways, but I expect them to find out basically right when he gets there. And that may embolden Cersei, and that may be why Jaime leaves. I expect Jaime to have left King's Landing at least by the end of this episode, if not sooner. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's a shot of him with some soldiers, so
yeah.
It seems like it may not even be in King's Landing, this shot with him with soldiers. I'll pull that one up later. Actually, Shay's going to pull it up in just a minute here. An image of Jaime passing through an arch. You guys can take a look at this, and the quote from the episode preview says, Jaime learned from his mistakes. To me, this was the hardest to figure out. I mean, Jaime's made plenty of mistakes. It's hard to guess which one he's learning from here.
I was thinking he had made no mistakes. What's there to learn from?
Maybe he's learning to not lose his hand. You know, don't lose your left hand. You need both. You need the other hand. Maybe that was a mistake. No, I don't know what his mistakes are, but maybe it's something to do with military, something to do with, you know, getting his troops together, something to do with politics, I don't know, something to do with trusting Cersei, something to do with trusting Euron, something to do with hostages. There's a lot of possibilities, and none of them sound like slam dunks to me. So, yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. Thank you for the super chat, Matthew Brown. We don't see a question attached, so if you do have a question to share, we'll be looking out for it, but otherwise, we appreciate it. And yeah, so I'm guessing this shot of Jaime passing through the arch is indication that he's either already left, this could be another location, or he's getting ready to leave, because you get these soldiers sitting there. It's like, hey, here, come on, troops, let's get ready to go. You know, Jaime with soldiers doesn't, you know, those are Lannister soldiers. Those aren't City Watch. Those aren't, you know, City Guards. Those aren't Kingsguard. So it seems like he's going to be out in the field pretty soon. Yeah, so there's a lot to warn about there. Oh, here's another thing. We got not just Carice Van Houten did an interview recently, but so did Gemma Whalen. That's Yara. And both Hollywood Reporter and Newsweek, she did interviews with it. And she had a funny quote about what's next. They asked what's next for her. Is she in danger? Is she going to die? And she said, well, it's not looking good. And then she laughs. But I can't say anything else. Well, yeah, of course she can't say anything else. Other little tidbit, there's been a lot of interviews with Pilo Asbæk. That's Euron. And he says he expects to die, which is sort of a spoiler that he doesn't die this season. Yeah. If he says he expects, maybe he's just being clever and wording it a certain way to leave it open. But if he says he expects to die, that almost indicates that he hasn't died yet, that his death scene doesn't occur this season, which I think is appropriate because he's just now bursting onto the scene and kicking ass, and it's only a 7-episode season. I think he needs to be around messing things up a little longer.
Maybe he meant himself personally as an actor, you know, because he's a reckless driver or something. You know?
Again, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking out the Behind the Silence 9-minute video documentary about how they filmed that battle scene. It's really cool, even if just to see Pilo Asbæk's interview, because the guy's really funny and charismatic, and I just enjoy hearing him talk.
One neat thing I got from that, by the way, is in that scene, I was even wondering, with the fire and the sparks kind of floating all around them, was that CGI? How are they doing this? How come everyone's hair isn't catching up? Those were real sparks flying all around. That was real fire.
They treated everyone's hair and beards with flame retardant foam. Okay, Dornish Dan, super chat. Will people still think Jaime is on a redemptive arc if he kills Olenna? Good question. Very good question. Well, see, Jaime's arc as redemptive has already been a tougher sell in the show because he killed his own cousin. You know, he killed Alton Lannister to escape. And that was just very different. I mean, that was before his redemption. To be fair, that was before he lost his hand. So this anything maybe before he starts becoming a better guy. Maybe we can sort of call that old Jaime. And ever since he's lost his hand, it's new Jaime. So I don't know. What do you think?
I have a slightly different perspective in the first place, and it might take me a minute to explain this, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it's controversial, but I don't know how much redemption he really needs. I think for the most part he's been at least as morally good as almost every other character in the show. He's just arrogant, but not much more arrogant than every other character on this show. You know what I mean? And he is being portrayed in a better light recently, but I don't think his fundamental character has changed that much. Like some of the worst things he's done, like kill Bran, if you stop and think about it,
What if he kills?
He did it so nonchalantly, but the fact is, he did it to stop a war. He did it. If he hadn't done that, him, Cersei, Joffrey, Tommen, Myrcella, they're all getting their heads chopped off. A war is going to start. Tywin's not going to let Robert kill his whole Lannister family. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Maybe he shouldn't have been having an affair with his sister in the first place. But there's all kinds of things that characters shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And then once they are, bad things ensue. And I don't feel like we need this redemptive arc for Dany after she called Drogo, hey, I want to be on Iron Throne. He's like, okay, went to war, raped and pillaged a bunch of people. No one's feels like Dany's on this redemptive arc since that happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
She caused terrible things to happen. Jaime prevented terrible things from happening by killing this one boy. And again, we could probably do a whole podcast certainly. That'd be cool actually to do a whole podcast just about Jaime. I'm just saying that I have a slightly different perspective that I don't necessarily feel like Jaime is or needs to be on a redemptive arc in the first place. And I don't think killing Olenna stops it, assuming that it was going on in the first place.
Right on. Also, a super chat from Miss Arsenal 18X. Thanks, Miss Arsenal 18X. I see no question attached, so I guess you just get a shout out. Appreciate that. I think it's really interesting. I wonder if Jaime's just going to kill her outright. You guessed maybe they keep her alive just to, because it's maybe makes them seem better. Maybe politics-wise it looks a little better. I reconsidered that a little. I think maybe you might be right on that. And they may not, but they may just want the shock value of TV.
Yeah.
Of Olenna
I think we
being killed
talked
off.
about it, but we didn't talk about it here, I don't think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, just the idea that maybe Olenna is captured but not executed, because it's not particularly honorable to execute some old woman whose whole family's been killed off already.
Exactly. She's not a threat anymore.
Right.
Because
Her line
she has
is
no
eliminated.
Family. Yeah. No one's going to come rescue her necessarily. I mean, maybe some loyalists would come rescue her, but with Jaime's, one line of dialogue to Randall Tarly, where he says, "The Reach will take your lead." That it seems like maybe Olenna won't have many people siding with her, especially given that this whole political spin of she's the one who brought the savages to our shores, dishonorable. And the Reach is very haughty and noble and all about that. Them in the Vale especially are really all about the chivalry and knighthood and all that kind of upstanding behavior. It's really, those traditions really are most important in those two regions.
I did have a couple meta thoughts on whether or not Olenna survived, one of which was that she's such an interesting, popular character, it'd be a shame for her to die. It seems like they want to keep her around to entertain us. But on the other hand, it's more meaningful to kill a character. If every time someone's cool and popular, they have plot armor, well then we'd never lose Ned. You know what I mean? You have to have people we care about die in order to keep us afraid for keep people we care about. So.
Okay. We did have a question from Miss Arsenal 18X. Here's the question. Wanted to ask, how does Jon think the White Walkers are going to get past the wall exactly? Does he think they're going to climb it or knock it down or what? Yeah, it's a big question. Like the Archmaester Ebros is like, they've never gotten past the wall. Why should we worry about that now? What is Jon? What do you think Jon is worried about? Maybe he just, there's got to be something. They've got to have a way around.
Yeah.
There's got to be something.
Well, he's already had one battle at the wall, right? Wildlings had never got past before either, but it was close there, right?
It's true.
And
without Stannis showing up, they may have done it.
Yeah, and wildlings can't come back from the dead. All those wildlings that were killed in that battle are now part of the undead. It may be tough. A lot of them might die in the process. They may have to funnel through some, narrow passage, but there's infinite of them, and they don't die.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't happen next week, or even in Jon's lifetime, it's still this constant threat that exists. So you got to remember, this wall was built, and for centuries, right, generations and generations was defended. It was this important part of the land and the world and the culture was to defend the wall against this threat in the north. And it's just been forgotten about. John's here to remind us, hey, you gotta not forget about this. The threat is still there. Even if he doesn't have some specific detail of how they're going to get past, there's a reason they didn't just build the wall and abandon it in the first place. It's been manned, and now it's not, and he's worried about that. And it makes sense, even if he doesn't have the exact plan that the White Walkers are going to get through it with. It doesn't mean that there's no way it can happen. So.
Yeah. Now, I've seen a lot of people are disappointed with the possibility of the wall, the sea being frozen and the walkers just going around it. They think that's anticlimactic. I suppose John has even considered that possibility yet. Maybe he'll be made aware of it soon, especially if the sea really is freezing. Be like, oh, good Lord, our moat just froze. I mean, that's the equivalent. Is like, oh, man, could this get any worse? And we know that, Tormund and those guys are being sent to Eastwatch, and we're not really sure what's going on there. I'm kind of assuming that we won't hear any news of that just yet, especially because John's going south, and it seems like the Winterfell politics are going to take front and center in the short term, and we'll have Night King and his army a little later. That seems like a thing for the end of the season. Could be surprised, who knows, but that seems to be something they're going to hold on to for a bit.
That was a sentiment that I saw a lot of people say, is that, how come they never did this before? What's the point of the wall? But my response to that is, one, I feel like it is very possible to happen. We saw when the White Walker at Caster's Keep just froze water almost instantly with his presence.
It was kind of foreshadowing.
It's clear that it's a potential thing that can happen. But why didn't it happen in the past? Well, maybe in the past their power level wasn't as high, or they weren't motivated to do it. It's a question we've been asking all along. Why are the White Walkers coming about at this moment in general? We don't exactly know, but that might be connected to why in the past they didn't freeze this water over and bypass the wall, and now they are.
Slowly ramping up. Yeah. They're slowly ramping up. There's no evidence that the wall has ever actually stopped them. We don't know for sure. It just seems likely, but we don't know. I mean, the wall was built, for all we know, the wall was built after the walkers vanished, and they've never come back until now. This is sort of the common story we're told. It's almost like the people say, you don't build that wall just to keep out wildlings. Well, effectively, that may be what they did.
I had just a funny comment to make, but I started to think, ooh, what is there possible? Maybe the White Walkers built the wall to keep children of the forest out, or the first men out, or something like that. I don't know if that's just completely silly. If it is, I'm just joking.
I can see people being why they would think that was anticlimactic for them just to walk around the wall, but I do think it's realistic. I mean, realistic given the setting and what we've been told about the walkers. Like you said, the freezing of the water there. I mean, freezing seawater is a lot more than freezing a few puddles or whatever. But still, they showed that may have been intentional to prepare us for this. So
also, something being what you might think of as being anticlimactic, it doesn't necessarily make it bad or even anticlimactic. Just throwing this out there, the scene in Indiana Jones where that guy pulls out his sword and he's all flipping it around. You're ready for this fight, and he just pulls out his pistol and shoots him dead. You know what I mean? That was a little anticlimactic, but it's a very memorable moment in film history. So
I see Podcast Winterfell in the chat. Hey guys, how you doing there? And there's an interesting comment here as well, talking about the idea of, well, maybe they don't know what they were doing there. They don't know that what the wall was even built for in the first place. But maybe Bran can answer that question. We talk about all the limitless possibilities for what Bran can look at. He's like, well, how did the wall work before? What did the walkers do in the ancient, super ancient past? I mean, he was able to look back and see the first White Walker being made. So
that's right.
He has already looked back that far. So it's not like oh, he can't look back that far. No, it's already happened. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe Bran, with his vast ability to see everything or anything, this is what they'll decide to show us, some sort of
to be clear though, Bran's potential ability to see everything or anything, I don't know if he could just willy-nilly go back to whenever, wherever.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move onward. We can always come back to some of these other topics later after we've covered our main topics. We're going to go, the official episode here is going to go about 10 to 15 more minutes, and then we're going to end our official dialogue, but continue to take questions. Again, that's only going to be for you guys who are live. I am not going to edit these questions and add them to the podcast later. So you guys are special. You 550, close to 600 odd people, you're the special ones today.
We'll take one question from each person.
So let's talk about Casterly Rock. Now, this appears to be something that we've seen a lot of trailer shots for. It wasn't entirely clear when some of the first trailers were coming out, but at this point, I believe every single shot of the Unsullied we've seen in battle is this battle, which tells us a lot. One, what are the Unsullied going to do after this? Are they going to win and be so decimated that they're not a useful army anymore? Are they going to lose? The trailers seem to show them doing well. We see them get inside Casterly Rock. That, at least, is going to happen. That doesn't mean they win. It means they're likely to win. But they could take heavy losses. Grey Worm could die. They could be severely reduced as a fighting force. So they're just, well, we're just going to garrison Casterly Rock. We're not good for much else now because we lost 4/5 of our army. So the fact that there's no other trailer shots later in the season of the Unsullied means maybe they just didn't have the budget to put them in multiple battles. Maybe we just haven't seen those shots, or maybe something kind of bad happens.
I know there's a sentiment out there that wonders if Varys is a traitor. There's people who think that the fleet, Yara's fleet getting ambushed by Euron, was a result of some sort of backstabbing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to totally discount that. I default to not thinking that because both the fleets are right there in the same sea anyway. It doesn't seem that far-fetched that Euron could have had scouts or just coincidentally run into them. But maybe, especially because they did have that scene where they seemed to... Varys had to justify himself to Dany. Maybe it was there just because it's something we and many people have been speculating, and how are these relationships going to play out? There's things in the past that they might be in contention, so they needed to address that. And so they did. But maybe that also was maybe some foreshadowing, hinting that there was some backstabbing going. Maybe we should be worried about this. And if, let's just say, if Varys or someone could have tipped Euron's hat to where Yara's fleet was, maybe he could also tip Cersei's hat to someone on the way to Casterly Rock.
Yes.
And so this force shows up to Casterly Rock, and we even hear Tyrion say, they know we're coming, So, say it seems like things are going well. This commando force sneaks inside, opens the front gate, main force comes to the front gate, and then boiling oil is dropped on them, or wildfire lights up, and they just face this devastating loss right off the bat.
And that would be the part the trailers hid from us. They show the Unsullied getting inside, because that happens. We know for a fact not for a fact, the trailers seem to strongly indicate that a small commando force goes in through the tunnels or the secret passage, the drains. I've got a few Tyrion quotes that show that this is probably going to happen in the books as well. It's been set up that way. So, but yeah, like you said, it could be a trap. I don't expect it to be. I don't think either of us expect that, but it's definitely worth mentioning as a possibility. But there's a lot of odd things about this battle. It's going to be a Game of Thrones battle that clearly we're going to see because the trailer shows a lot of battle scenes of this. Unsullied fighting Lannisters, but there's only one character we know. Grey Worm is literally the only character in this battle that we have a name for or any background on. By the way, that's part of why they did that scene with Missandei, to set that up, to give him a little more, make this more important, to give more tension to Grey Worm, just to remember that he's a real person, to make us like him more, to set up this, worry of his life in Missandei and worry about what Missandei's going to be thinking.
If we're hoping to see his butt again, we're worried he'll be killed.
So that's really unusual. We're going to have this large battle that they've spent a lot of money on. Clearly, they couldn't have done this cheaply, where we only have Grey Worm as the only character that we know. And that's just really kind of, it's kind of a head scratcher that it went this way. But I'm not complaining, but it's kind of odd.
And it does make you wonder what else there might be to this that we're not seeing.
So based on our theory of no other named characters, to me that means Grey Worm's pretty safe. I'm not terribly worried about him. I could see them doing it. They could surprise us, no doubt. But there's no second in command Unsullied. There's none. Maybe they'll introduce something like that.
Yeah, I tell you, a part of me does hope that they introduce new characters. I do want to see some Dornish general. I do want to see some Unsullied captain. And they are still introducing new characters. Randall Tarley and his son seem to be getting featured.
Yeah.
Euron, even, I guess he was here last season. So was Randall Tarley. But still, they seem to be getting incorporated into the show. The Maester and Old Town, so on. So it's not crazy that they can introduce a new character. But, and I do hope for it. But aside from that, it does make me feel like if Grey Worm dies, that battle is probably lost, and vice versa. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I don't see how the Unsullied take Casterly Rock, Grey Worm dies, and they maintain... does that make sense?
Yeah, I think things are kind of tied together thematically. I see what you mean. That makes sense.
If they do win the battle, I can see how maybe they both lose a lot of forces and need a force to maintain Casterly Rock, and so Grey Worm and the Unsullied are removed from the rest of the plot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, here's a still, by the way. This is a really cool image of Grey Worm with his faceplate. This is super awesome. I love his armor. He looks really badass. I was gonna do that after. And that's just, look at this. It's so cool. He's such a. I love the Unsullied armor that they pulled up for this. This is great. And so we have to wonder. There's another shot of him that we don't have, but it's from a previous trailer where he's fighting someone in a corridor, which is more evidence that they get deep inside the castle, which seems to indicate they're going to be successful. So I'm definitely still leaning. That's the way I would be pretty. I'm pretty confident they're going to win, but I'm not confident that it won't come without a high cost. Now here's a little tidbit for why how they might be getting in. I pulled a couple of quotes. Remember my long-standing attitude towards information that's repeated by George R. Martin in the books. Here's this from A Dance with Dragons, Tyrion 3. If it is useful occupation you require, useful occupation you shall have, his father then said. So to mark his manhood, Tyrion was given charge of all the drains and cisterns within Casterly Rock. Perhaps he hoped I'd fall into one. But Tywin had been disappointed in that. The drains never drained half so well as when he had charge of them. Now, so Tyrion's clearly giving subtle hints about that there's little things going on in Casterly Rock that he knows about that higher ranking people wouldn't, because Tywin himself is not going to be hands-on with the drains. But also in the world of Ice and Fire, there's this quote. Regardless of his origins, the tales agree that somehow Lan the Clever winkled the Casterlys out of their rock and took it for his own. The precise method by which he accomplished this remains a matter of conjecture. In the most common version of the tale, Lan discovered a secret way inside the rock, a cleft so narrow that he had to strip off his clothes and coat himself with butter in order to squeeze through. Once inside, however, he began to work his mischief. So that's another hint that there's a secret way in. And the Game of Thrones Wikipedia flat out refers directly to Lan the Clever and a secret tunnel. So it's been mentioned several places, so this is extremely likely to happen. And I would think that if the Lannisters knew they were coming, they wouldn't let them inside and then spring a trap. They would just trap them in the secret tunnel or something like that. So I still think the theory that something's going to go wrong is very much alive, but I'm doubtful that the Lannisters are going to have a lot of advance warning. We do see a shot that we didn't pull, but we do see a shot of them coming in by ship. The Targaryen ships are arrayed behind Grey Worm. Now here's another image we have. This one has caused some people, I think, a little confusion. This is a bunch of archers. I saw some people guessing that these were Tarly archers based on the helmet design. I really don't think so, especially because of the color. And the Tarly archers, I see no reason for them to be fighting, defending a castle, which is clearly what's happening here. These guys are on a battlement. They're on a wall. They're shooting down at someone else attacking them. I don't see the Tarlys being in a defensive position at any time soon. I do see the Casterly Rock being in a defensive position in this next episode. So I do think those were Lannister archers, especially because we see a different shot in another trailer of Unsullied climbing walls, falling down, shot full of arrows. So we know there's going to be a scene of archers shooting at the Unsullied in this episode. So I think that's all pretty well sealed up as far as that possibilities go.
You know, this is a quick thought. I wonder if it's possible. This maybe is a little too convoluted, but maybe it is. Maybe the Lannisters have to attack Randall Tarly. Maybe he goes back on his commitment to Jaime, and that's the lesson Jaime's learning.
Not to trust in him. Interesting. I would
not to tear someone between their oaths. You know, that they're going to default to the closer oath. You know.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting idea. I would guess that's not likely, but possible for sure. You know, that's kind of cool. I like the thought. Okay, we have one more location, and that we confirm. There may be other locations in this episode that weren't shown in the trailer, but the Citadel, there's a brief shot of the Citadel in this one. We've got Sam, looks like he's standing in front of Ebros's desk, because there seems to be like some anatomy drawings there, and Ebros is the top guy for that at the Citadel. So maybe he's being chewed out for what he did. Maybe he's arguing more about the obsidian thing. It's not clear. Do you have any predictions for what's next at the Citadel?
I have a few thoughts about the Citadel and Sam, in fact, and I don't know if any of them are going to happen as quick as this episode, but I wonder, and I think we touched on this a little bit before, the idea of there being a split demand for resources if they want Dragonstone. Like if, say that this thing that Sam did, whether it cures Jorah or not, what if it spreads? You know what I mean? What if he causes the the grayscale to spread? And then suddenly they need dragonglass in Old Town in addition to needing dragonglass in the North. Whether it spreads or not, you can imagine Sam getting in trouble and getting kicked out of Old Town. Minor side note, another thing that I've thought about, kind of jokingly, I can't remember if I've said it on here or not, but Sam so far has stolen a sword from his family, stolen keys from a maester, stolen books from a locked chamber, and performed a forbidden ritual. I wonder if he's going to end up being Qyburn's apprentice, especially if he gets kicked out of Old Town at this moment. Now, he partly might not care. He's got what he needs, right? He's got the information that he needs to help Jon in the North. That's what he's really there for. On some level, he's there to be a maester, but maybe he's decided it's not worth it. These guys don't understand what's going on in the real world. It's taking too long. I have the immediate knowledge that I need. I'm getting kicked out anyway, etc., etc. One way or the other, if that happens, I think it's possible, if not likely, he heads to Dragonstone to get the Dragon Glass. And who else might want to go to Dragonstone to visit Dany? Jorah, so I can see that being a trip. I can see Jorah and Sam traveling together to Dragonstone.
Okay, so I have an add-on theory to that. We said, is Cersei going to marry Euron? Okay, regardless whether she does or not, what's next for Euron? He's got to continue to be this evil badass doing dark stuff, killing people, doing things, making moves, getting power.
We're just going to have a bunch of torture scenes with him and Yara like we had Ramsay and Theon.
I hope not. But that's a good point, though. He's basically destroyed his own native opposition. He destroyed Yara and Theon's Iron Fleet version, so he doesn't really have opposition for his own kingdom anymore. So he can be entirely focused on his alliance with Cersei, his potential alliance with Cersei, or his own plans. In the books, it's widely believed that he's going to have something to do with Old Town. So those two things could go together, right? We also, noticed something that might be true, which is that the character playing Archmaester Ebros appears to have been cast in 6 episodes this season, which means Sam is very unlikely to be leaving the Citadel soon.
Unless there's some leftover plot line like Grayscale breaking out across Old Town.
And they need to show us that. Yes, absolutely possible. So, putting those things together, we could still get Euron attacking Old Town, some version of that in the show, which is what we expect in the books. It hasn't happened in the books. It's certainly not a guarantee. There's a lot of reason to suspect it might. And if we apply that thinking here, and especially added on the fact that we don't know what else Euron's going to do, like, is Euron going to... He's not going to attack Daenerys and her dragons. Like, that seems like suicide. He's not going to go north, like...
He might, another thing he might do, he might go trap... There is still enough fleet to carry the Unsullied to Casterly Rock.
Yes.
And that's not far from home if he heads back to Casterly Rock and or the Iron Islands and traps the Unsullied there.
That could solve our problem there. Yeah, we don't know what the Unsullied are going to do next. Maybe Euron hymns them in there. That's clever. I like it. He could destroy the Lannister fleet, destroy the Targaryen fleet that drops the Unsullied off, and then they would have to march back overland, which maybe isn't possible, or maybe they're too decimated from their attack on Casterly Rock. Casterly Rock is supposed to be really hard to take. Even Unsullied are total badasses, but this can't be easy for them. Even with the Secret Tunnel, I don't expect them to not take heavy casualties. So,
and even if they do take it, are they trying to hold it? Like, we've already seen this be an issue time and time again.
Yes.
When Theon takes Winterfell, someone's still got to run Winterfell. He's not doing a good job of it. Dany has a problem. She takes these cities. Is Grey Worm going to run Casterly Rock? Are the powers that be in Casterly Rock just going to bend the knee and do whatever he says? What would he even say? I see a lot of problems with this. So.
Yeah, it's really. I'm very curious. This is hard to predict. Very hard to predict. Yeah, and it becomes a meta. All we can do is spell out all these missing, these gaps. Like, what's Euron going to do next? What's Sam going to do in the meantime? And try to see if maybe those things connect. That's one thing that makes predicting a little bit easier this season. Is there's fewer plot lines, there's fewer locations, and all the main characters are condensed in one place. Although they're starting to split apart a little bit. Although Jon is going from the north to being with Daenerys, so they're still kind of together in a sense, just different togethers. Yeah. So there's a lot of, which is a good theme here, is a lot of potential for not just reunions, although there is potential for some great reunions, but just first meetings. Dany and Jon obviously is about as big as it gets, but there's also more potential for Euron and Cersei to have another conversation, Euron and Jaime to be around, maybe Euron and Qyburn we're kind of hoping for to see how that goes. That could be really interesting. So I think there's a lot that the trailers have shown us, but there's a lot that some of it's a distraction because there's a lot that they haven't shown us, and there's a lot that we know kind of has to happen, but how, why, when, that's a lot trickier. Okay, well that's our official coverage I've got a few other things to say though, and then we'll take some questions from you guys, and we'll call it a day. Like I said, I rewatched all the trailers that have been put out so far, and by the end of episode 4, meaning this is episode 3 we're about to see. Episode 4 is called The Spoils of War, and I don't know much about it, but it's other than that it's short, and that there's a shot of Lannister soldiers on the cover. So that could be another battle. We could be getting close to the field of fire, or this could be some sort of showdown between the Reach elements with the Lannisters involved. So here's a few things we haven't seen yet, though. I just by mention, we're not going to pull them up again, but here's a few things we haven't seen yet.
Things we've seen in trailers but haven't seen in a show.
Right. That we haven't, minus those that we expect to see in this next episode. Arya looking under the bed. Remember that scene where Arya seems to be looking under a bed? I don't know. What's that about? Is Littlefinger hiding under there? She's like, where did you go, Littlefinger? I'm going to get you. You can't hide under the bed.
Nymeria is hiding under the bed.
Yeah, so that's a really curious shot, because, like, it's hard to imagine why is she looking under the bed? It may not even be a bed, you know.
I wonder if maybe someone has taken her sword. If she put her sword under the bed, she's staying at some inn, she's traveling, wakes up, looks there, and it's not there.
Could be. We have that shot I mentioned earlier, Littlefinger creeping around the corner. That's bound to happen at some point. Maybe sooner. I'm expecting it to happen sooner rather than later. Of course, we have the big field of fire battle. That, the Daenerys on her dragon with all the Dothraki sweeping in, fighting the Lannisters. That's coming. Maybe as soon as episode 4, but I sort of expect it to be a little later in the season. Jaime's charge, his kind of suicidal-looking charge with the lance, and by that flame of water past all the carnage. There's that shot of 2 people in the water as a gout of apparently dragon flame shoots above them, which also hasn't happened yet, which may be part of the field of fire battle. We also have that shot of the Night King looking up and Bran taking over the Ravens. Yeah. That's probably feels like an end of season type of thing, but maybe it'll be sooner.
That is the type of thing it could be like in this next episode. It could just be 2 minutes of 2 scenes just reminding us about this threat that's out there.
Absolutely. Like, what is Bran going to be doing? Like, we know we're pretty sure Bran gets the Winterfell this episode, but like we said, no, it's super hard to predict where he could send his third eye. There's a million things he could do, but an obvious potential is him checking in on the Night King, checking in. What's up with them? Are they still coming? Are they? What's their deal?
Especially if Sansa doesn't seem to be concerned with it. If John's overly concerned with this thing, right? Bran is going to show up, not caring or thinking anything about Littlefinger and Cersei's queen out there. He just doesn't care about that. You don't understand. There's this zombie army coming, and Sansa might not realize how important it is. So maybe he'll try to evoke some image to get her in on the relevance or whatever.
That was an interesting little slip of the tongue. You mentioned you accidentally said Bronn, and I suppose if we see Jaime leaving King's Landing this episode, he should be with Bronn. I would expect that, because we see him together in a trailer shot that was released much earlier. They're just kind of side by side on a horse, getting ready for a battle. Of course, if Jaime's going out in the field, he's taking Bronn with him. So
that's the thing I'm always looking forward to.
We'll get some Bronn dialogue, probably maybe a little quip or something. He's like, "Hey, what about that wife you owe me?" Something like that.
Cersei, let me get Tyene.
Yeah, let me get Tyene, man. Come on, give me Tyene. Hook me up, dog. So speaking of Tyene, some people wanted to know about why wasn't Euron poisoned? They clearly cut him in his legs a few times. Well, there's no evidence that Nymeria or Obara used poison. Tyene used poison, and Ilaria used poison, and people just assume that all 4 of them do. But there's no reason for us to assume that they do. It would make sense if they did, but
it would also make sense if they didn't. Let's say in general they did. Do they just always have poison on their weapons all the time?
Yeah,
This
they were
is
caught
a
off
surprise
guard.
attack that suddenly happened. Maybe they could have, should have had time to apply some poison right quick. But also maybe Euron has traveled the 14 seas and is immune. He's spent the past few years building up an immunity to iocane powder.
Yes, see, he's oh man, what's that character's name? I can't remember that character's name from Princess Bride.
The Man in Black.
Wesley. Yes, yeah. So he built up that. And that, by the way, is sort of based on. There's actually some truth to that. There's a Mithridates the third or fourth of who fought the Romans. He did that. He took poisons as a kid to try to build up, because there was so much poisoning in the courts of the East at that time.
I do that too. I've slowly built up an immunity to Coca-Cola.
Speaking of, what are you drinking? We got people asking about that. And are you taking poison in this drink?
If Mountain Dew counts as poison. This is
some people would say it is. Yes.
Yeah. This is a naked protein drink mixed with Mountain Dew and green tea. And it's delicious, I'm telling you.
No, it's not.
and relatively healthy.
Okay,
It's
well.
full of like vitamin A and C and even protein and carbonation and caffeine. What else do you want?
I, on the other hand, am drinking coffee with dark chocolate syrup, and it's just great. Okay, so let us. This is the official. This is where I'm going to cut the podcast off. When I edit this and put it up later, this is the ending right here. But you guys who are here live, we're going to treat you all to another, say, half hour ish of questions. So fire away, folks, in the chat box there. Super chat gets noticed quicker, but we will take regular questions as well. And let's see what we got here. Rebecca Androli says, that sounds much better. She's referring to my drink than your drink.
No, maybe she's referring to my drink over your drink. Don't knock it till you tried it.
So we have Rowan at Cantrell here. If you were the showrunners and were given an extra season, what would you have covered more that the current show skipped over or went briefly? Ooh, good call. There's a lot of dialogue. I think I would definitely use it to have more exposition and dialogue and character building, you know, because it's one of the things we love most about Game of Thrones is all these amazing, deep characters and all their relationships. I'm not sure specifically where I would do that, but it would be a lot of that.
Yeah, is it like an extra season starting right now or back between season 4 and 5? Depends on where we get it.
Let's say let's say 2 more episodes per season, so spread out.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I would love to have in a whole episode is just the dialogues that these characters getting reunions would have. I want to hear Jon tell Sansa about being resurrected. I want to hear Sansa tell Jon about being held captive by Joffrey. You know.
Yeah. We have another interesting question. Does the announced earlier release of the Fire and Blood history book, does that potentially hint at maybe what we might expect with some of the spin-offs? Like maybe he's trying to get some of the more of the Targaryen history out there. I think it's absolutely possible. I mean, we do know for a fact, 100% confirmed, that all of these are prequels. All of the proposed spin-offs are prequels. So none of them are post A Song of Ice and Fire, which absolutely means that, you know, the last 300 years are all Targaryen rule. So if any of it falls there, assuming it's in Westeros, because there's always a possibility that it's set in Essos, then you get a really strong chance of that. And it would make sense that you would want more of that filled out so that for George's own, you know, perspective, he doesn't want them to change it too much. He would like them to kind of stick to his version of history rather than doing their version. So that maybe is kind of a smart move on his part to try to get out in front of that. You know, to be like, hey, this is the official story. Stick to this as much as you can, rather than letting them make that stuff up, or rather than them having to come to him constantly and ask questions like, hey, what did this happen? He's like, here, just refer to this. Let me work on the Winds of Winter. Y'all, you know, read what I've written. So I hope that's the case. That would be really cool. And there's a lot of details that are going to be coming out about Fire and Blood, you know, now that we know it's coming sooner, because we thought it was going to be out for like 10 years. So so that's just kind of cool. So we'll be keeping you all abreast of any developments or hints or news on both the prequels and Fire and Blood as we get it. And of course, we'll be covering the first part of Fire and Blood in October, because the Sons of the Dragon mini, you know, outtake is going to be part of a collection, and we'll be all over that, as you all would expect. Okay, what other questions do we have here?
There's 80 other questions.
There are.
So many.
I see somebody mention Missandei, which is interesting. That's something I kind of skipped over. If Daenerys is having a moment, if she's upset about the loss of her fleet, which justifiably so, I'd be upset too. You know, Missandei is the one that would come to her and be kind of her, like, help her get over it. That's kind of seems like her role at this point she's Dany's closest friend at this point, her closest confidant. She's not that close to Tyrion, though she might become that close to Tyrion. Certainly not that close to Varys or Melisandre. And Grey Worm's off doing his thing, so that's it. Missandei is her, like, closest thing to a friend.
I could see her bonding with Melisandre and Varys, given that they all were raised as slaves.
Yeah.
Also, I could see Missandei having a gear shift, right? Let's say that news comes back of the fleet being destroyed.
Yeah.
Dany's mad. And she's got Olenna's words ringing in her ears, be a dragon. And then we get word of Grey Worm being killed at Castle Rock. Missandei might get mad. Missandei might be like, you're right, be a dragon, burn him down. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't know if that's likely, but I can see Missandei switching from a voice of reason to herself being angered and encouraging Dany to be more violent, straightforward, stop playing in long term, be the dragon, you know.
I see another question here. Nick Young, post-Citadel, what role do you see for Sam in the endgame of the saga? Well, the very, very end game, we have that prediction of him sitting down to write the chronicle of all this, which has been foreshadowed in a few places, which is good because it sort of gives us a reason to hope for him to survive the series. And also the fact that he's the one that George most identifies with as a human being. He's like, George is, you know, the one that's most like him. He identifies most with Sam, which kind of is like, well, is George going to kill himself off? Is he that cruel? You know, is he that kind of guy? So I think a lot of people agree with that theory. In the meantime, there's a lot still in between then and there. I think maybe he'll have something to do with outfitting the Night's Watch or those who are fighting for the Dawn. You know, it seems like Dragonglass is some form or fashion. Dragonglass is his future. He's the science guy, and Dragonglass is their crucial piece of, you know, quote unquote technology. And he's also the guy that's got access to all the ancient books and all this stuff to figure out. So I think he's the brains, the strategist, the guy who's going to make the technology happen. He's a big part of the catalyst for winning the war.
Jinx in the chat says, "There to the Wall and Back Again" by Samuel Tarley.
Yes. Good call, Jinx. That's true. Yes, GEODF. Yes, Aziz Sam is George R. R. Martin's sacred character. Yes, that's what he says. He says he identifies with him most. He says that he says he wants to be more like Tyrion, but he is more like Sam. Because he wants to have that kind of ability to talk and be snarky and clever and quick-tongued. But that's not George R. R. Martin. George is not tongue-tied. George is... nothing wrong with his ability to speak, but Tyrion's on another level. Tyrion's just...
Also, George is a different man now than he was 20 years ago when he started this, right?
That's very true. He knows these characters better than anyone. As much as we've all gotten to know them, George knows what's coming for them, too. So he knows more about them than we do, even if we've maybe... you know, dive just as deep into trying to understand them as he have. We don't know what's coming for them like he does. There's no way we can have that kind of insight. So it's a whole different thing. So it's kind of interesting to think about. Like, George's perspective is obviously the most unique of all. Also the most mysterious. Yeah. Zoilo, do we think Sam will get kicked out of the Citadel for disobeying orders as to bring him back into the larger story? He might be. I mean, that's Sean, you're sort of talking, you know, he doesn't have this darkness to him like Qyburn does, but he's doing a lot of the same things, breaking the rules, just straight up breaking the rules. You know, that you can certainly draw larger distinctions between Sam and Qyburn and say to show how different they are. But this is something that's absolutely similar. He's like, I don't listen to authority. I'm doing my thing, and he seems to maybe be right about a lot of it.
Yeah. Also, depending on how different they might be now when we look at it, how different are they from where Qyburn was 10 or however many years ago? Qyburn probably didn't start off being like, ooh, I'm going to go in there and break all the rules. He probably started off similar to Sam, wanting to learn, and was running into roadblocks, was taking too long, was cleaning up a bunch of poop. You know what I mean? He's like, look, I think I can resurrect someone if you guys will let me. Like, what are you talking about? You're banned, you know?
Yeah. And then he goes and does it, yeah.
It's also worth noting, I was thinking recently of how Sam, you know, stole the sword and did the Forbidden Ritual, but go back a little farther. He's done other things too, right? He
manipulated the vote,
right?
Lord Commander, yeah.
And he also that wasn't necessarily underhanded, but he's like skirting the line of his vows to the Wall.
Yes,
you're not supposed to sleep with another woman or have a child, and what is he? You know, what I mean?
He was trying to argue, like he was like, yeah, it says father no children. I didn't say anything about actual sex. Yeah, so Sam is.
You can imagine that's where Qyburn started, just like reading between the lines, trying to find excuses.
Technical, yeah.
The path to evil is paved with good intentions. Yep. I'm not necessarily saying that Sam is evil, we're going to become evil, but if he does, we'll look back and see the groundwork laid here.
And it goes to show that sometimes doing the right thing, you have to get your hands dirty to have the good result. I mean, these are not situations that we can necessarily port over to the real world because we don't have White Walkers and dragons and grayscale, but still, the whole idea of being a good guy regardless of the rules is a theme that's come up. I mean, there's always the maverick police officer, except the detective who plays by his own rules, and the chief's always yelling at him. Like it's one of the oldest stories there is, right?
Sam doesn't quite fit that standard mold. Of,
he doesn't.
Dirty Harry.
But but it's cool how that sort of that angle is here, even though his personality is so much different. He's just got this kind of sense of right and wrong that goes beyond the rules.
I can't wait for Sam to have a shard of Dragonglass up to a White Walker and ask him, "Do you feel lucky? Do you?" Punk.
Sam Bronson. We have a super chat from Jim O'Donnell. Thanks, Jim. The Book of Eclipses was shown while Sam was looking into the restricted area. Any chance the story of the comet colliding with the two moons can happen again? Well, I'm kind of doubtful that we'll have something major like that happen, but it's a cool idea, and I do really love any discussion of what's going on with all those different books that he's collecting, because they showed us shots of those things. Like you see maybe the Night Queen or on the book of the Long Night, on the cover of that Long Night book. At least it's probably Night Queen. I don't know what it is, but it looks, that's a safe guess, and that's a cool idea. I wonder if those are, I think these are probably just nods, because they're so sneaky that you can't really expect that they believe that most people are going to catch that. So it's hard for that to be a major plot point if they did it in such a way that hardly anyone's going to catch it. But that would be so cool and so unexpected if we have like the comet come back, or a second comet, and like we have a moon blowing up. I mean, damn, that would be so epic. Maybe it's too much to hope for, but sounds cool. Good idea, Jim. All right, what else do we have here? I've got to refresh the screen here to find another question. We're going to go for maybe another 10 or 15 minutes.
Document.
I'm sorry?
Go to the document. There's a live questions section.
Okay, Shay says she's been pulling some questions for us here. I'll go to the document. Rebecca Andrioli. Could Tyrion back-channeling be a reference to Tyrion planning an assault on Casterly Rock via the sewers, a.k.a. back channels? That is clever, because they absolutely get clever with those wordings. They get this kind of clever too. So I think that's possible. I think that is possible, and it could be both. It could. They also do. They not only get clever with these meanings, but they also use double meanings all the time.
Haven't they already left though? Isn't it? It seems like it's.
Well, Tyrion's not going to be there, but it could. But he would have given him those instructions. He would say, "Hey, Grey Worm, use this secret tunnel, and I'll tell you how to find it." Like. They haven't had that discussion on screen yet, but I assume that because there's a trailer shot of Grey Worm going into a cleft in the rock by boat.
Yeah. From
the first trailer, or second trailer, long time back. So maybe they're just going to have him go through the sewer and not just mention at all where they got that idea. But I think they're going to bring up Tyrion telling them that. It seems like they need to explain.
It only takes one line of dialogue for Grey Worm to say, "There's the tunnel Tyrion told me about."
Yes. So yeah. So I hope that's what I hope they don't just blaze past that. Another question here from LeVar Hollis. Does Sam know Jon died at the Wall? If not, how does he know Jon is no longer Lord Commander? No, he doesn't. I don't think he knows that Jon is no longer Lord Commander. He knows that Gior is no longer Lord Commander. I don't think he has. He knows that. I don't think he knows that Jon was killed. No, I'll go back up and answer the question more directly. I don't think he could have known that, because there's no Raven there. They didn't even know that Maester Aemon was dead. Remember, that was Sam's first scene at the Citadel. It was like, Maester Aemon is this, and he's like, that's why I'm here, actually. And he's all like, very unaggressive there. Question from Podcast Winterfell. Do you think the Arya Nymeria scene was a ruse to make us question her direction, only for it to pop up and kill Cersei towards the end of the season? I just don't see Arya being the one to kill Cersei. I don't know why. I don't have a lot of logic behind that. It's just maybe it's whatever detail my subconscious mind is playing with. It just doesn't feel right to me.
I've thought it before, but I feel it less and less as we see. I feel like they're showing Arya shifting her gears and shifting her physical course of direction. I think it was a great prediction earlier, but it's a worse prediction now given what we've seen so far.
Okay.
Cersei has so many more enemies beyond Arya, and B, Arya seems to be reevaluating her quest for revenge and is physically heading north and not south.
So Snow and Winterfell points out, and by the way, thanks for helping us with the chat there, Lord Mark, and he says a lot of people are asking us about the Iron Bank and whether they're going to come back in the story at all. They should come back in the story, but I hesitate to predict that they will, because they've never been a big part of the story. And even though their stated potential is grand, because they always get their due and they support other people when the side that they were supporting doesn't pay them back. I wonder if Dany's going to bring that up. I kind of doubt it. I just kind of don't think they have time for that, which is too bad, because Iron Bank is really powerful, and you'd think that they should be coming for Cersei and wanting to get repaid. But
even the Iron Bank might have to reevaluate things when dragons are involved, right?
yeah, that's true. That's true. And in fact, that's a thing in the books that a lot of people are wondering about. But the show is clearly handling it a lot differently. Iron Bank is not much of a part. So I kind of hate to say it, but I think the Iron Bank isn't even going to be mentioned again. I think that almost nothing, if not everything from Essos is just completely out of the story. We're not going to hear what's happening in Marine. We're not going to hear about Bravos. We're not going to hear about Pentos. We're not going to hear about, Illyrio. None of that. I just don't think we're going to get it. I wish we would get like a little bit, maybe a line of dialogue. We got a letter from Marine. Dario's doing just fine, But I just don't see it happening.
Iron Throne wonders if a character from the Iron Bank will be a cameo by Alan Greenspan.
With all the celebrity cameos, that would be right in line, wouldn't it? Okay, we'll take a couple more questions. We're going to end this in about 15 minutes. No elephants and tigers, card 3Z says. No, afraid not. No, elephants and tigers is a reference to the two political parties in Volantis. And if we're not going to get any more Dario, if we're not going to get Illyrio, we're certainly not getting the elephants and tigers. Bummer. I can expect there'll be plenty of them about them in the books, though. Let's see. Do we think we'll see an R plus L flashback? Yes, I do. We have not finished R plus L equals J. That story arc has not run its course. John does not even know yet. It's just been made pretty clear to us watchers. But the characters in the story, there is no indication that anyone other than Bran knows. And he hasn't even necessarily noodled out that Rhaegar was the father there. He probably could. It was common knowledge that Rhaegar and Lyanna were together. He knows that. So he probably has figured that out. But he hasn't brought it up. He hasn't talked with anyone about it. But it might happen as soon as this episode because, as we said, a lot of indication Bran gets to Winterfell this episode. So, any takes on that?
The one take I have on that is something I've pondered a little bit, is Ned's last words to Jon were, "We'll talk about your mother when I see you again."
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's possible for them to see each other again in a vision. Even if Ned doesn't directly tell Jon, if it becomes clear to Jon through a vision that Bran gives him.
Okay, we have a super chat from Mixesia. Sorry if I said that wrong. It's hinted Tyene fights the mountain. Will they? Well, that's funny. They did talk about that. She's like, I'll fight the mountain, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that is what Cersei does. Like, okay, fight a trial by combat. Yeah, her poison won't work on him. It worked on the real mountain, but it won't work on the undead mountain. Apparently, we missed this shot earlier. So we'll go ahead and take care of it now. It's the shot of Varys and Melisandre. No?
No, I was saying Doc.
Oh, I'm sorry. Misunderstood what Ashea said here. Okay, we have more questions here, live questions. We have Jesse Carson. Do you see any more Valyrian steel coming into action? Yes, I do. I do see more Valyrian steel coming into action. I think it might be part of the Citadel plot. It might be something else they discuss. That certainly, if he's going to stay there for several more episodes, that's another thing that could come up. Because we've seen Valyrian steel be extremely effective. We saw Jon's sword just take out that other, blast right through him.
That question earlier someone had about what season, what would I add if I had a whole nother... That's what I would add. A quest. Characters on a quest to find the different Valyrian weapons to go fight in the north. That would be awesome.
Spin-off idea, folks. The Valyrian Steel show. That's here's a question from Luna Acosta. I like this question. How do you think Gendry will be reintroduced? Could Arya meet him on the road to Winterfell, or maybe he's already working with the Brotherhood, like in the books? Well, I think if he was already working with the Brotherhood, we would have seen that. That's kind of weird that they're traveling together, and somehow Gendry just hasn't been on screen. I saw another theory that he's one of the blacksmiths in King's Landing working on the scorpions to shoot down dragons, but I really don't think so. Remember, Gendry was told to run away because he looks like Robert, and Robert's bastards are... Cersei doesn't want them around. So that seems unlikely. We have but Arya. I do think he's going to encounter Arya, but maybe not. Maybe he'll head north with the Brotherhood before. I don't know. There's some indications from the trailer that he's going to go north with Jon's party.
I would guess that they encounter each other eventually, but maybe not even this season.
Yeah, that could be. Okay, super chat from the Snow in Winterfell. Mark Joseph, that's writer of Maz Lacartho. Do you think Eastwatch playing a prominent role comes from George? If so, do you think the Cersei-Euron alliance also came from him? I've really wondered about the Cersei-Euron alliance in the books. I think there's a very strong chance it happens. It would happen maybe later. It would happen maybe after Cersei flees back to Castle Rock, which is certainly not a thing that is a sure thing. It's just, that's a theory built on a theory. Notice that Euron, since he's declared himself in the books, has not made any aggressive moves towards the Lannisters. He's only gone after the Reach and, you know, a few other hapless folks. But he's not targeted the Lannisters, which is interesting. Which is so, yes, I do think he may have gotten that from George. It's definitely possible. And Eastwatch, I definitely think that comes from George as well, because, you know, George would have told them, you know, where the walkers break through and, or, you know, how they break through and all that. I don't think they would do that on their own. I mean, they could do that on their own after hearing what George tells them. They could be like, you know, that's a good idea, but we can't do it that way. For show purposes, for production purposes, we can't do it that way. But, I mean, this is something where, this is one of the main things in the story, so I don't think they would kind of skimp on the budget for something that's so important. So I think that they're probably getting this from George, but they've just probably changed a few. They've probably spun some of the details a little differently, and maybe they've changed the ordering of events, things like that. What do you think?
It is another thing you got to wonder about if some sort of battle occurs at Eastwatch, kind of like Castle Rock and Grey Worm. Tormund's the only character there that we know. So
unless Jon goes there with them, you know. And,
right.
You know, yeah. That's
maybe eventually a big battle will happen and many other characters will converge. But at the moment, it's hard to have a whole lot of suspense or be vested in the, you know, the tragedy of someone losing there. We don't know the people there, so.
From Liquid Ocelot, do you think Gendry will survive the season? If yes, will he be legitimized? I mean, someone has to rule the Stormlands. Well, two things. They have hardly dealt with the Stormlands as a kingdom at all. It's probably the least dealt with kingdom, which is maybe preferable to how they handled Dorne. Some people think Gendry will sit the Iron Throne at the end. You know, he is technically a descendant of the Baratheon line. You know, he would have to be legitimized. I think that's a little far-fetched. And frankly, I do lean towards him dying. I do think he's going to die. Because I don't think that... I think that Jon's group that goes north, and it seems like he's probably going to be part of it because of some hints from trailers. Nothing direct. Nothing 100% confirmation. But, yeah, I kind of see him dying. But if not, then, yeah,
I think
maybe...
it's highly unlikely that he sits the throne.
Yeah.
The thing is, he might have claim on the throne over Cersei, right? Like, given that there was a revolution and the Baratheons took over, and that maybe they should still be in charge, but the Lannisters are imposters, you know, so maybe he should be there. Except Dany's back. The Baratheons got it from the Targaryens in the first place, and so it seems to me like there'd be a hard argument for him to be on the throne over Dany. Also, it just seems like highly unlikely for them to introduce a character for a season or so, have them disappear, suddenly come back and sit on the throne. You know what I mean? They've been deeply developing multiple characters that it makes sense would get there. I don't think he's randomly going to be the one.
I see people talking about Hot Pie and
sitting in the Iron Throne.
Yeah. Well, that's a safe prediction. It won't be the Iron Throne. It'll be the Bread Throne. He's gonna bake it with
the Bread Throne with the Bread Fort,
properly browned butter ahead of time. He is a survivor. So the people talking about how the actor who plays Hot Pie opened a bakery in London called You Know Nothing John Doe. Well, technically he didn't open it. And it's not a physical bakery. It's a delivery service that added Hot Pie themed items called You Know Nothing John Doe, and he's the spokesman. He was hired to be that. He's not actually his gig.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah, sorry. Here I am just ruining everything. No, it's awesome though. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
you got Hot Pie as the spokesman for this, and I'm sure he's making some dollars off that. Smart. I would capitalize on that too. I would totally capitalize on that. Smart move. I forget his real name, but good job, Hot Pie. You're definitely a fan favorite. He's been a fan favorite since the books, because you know back in. I don't think it happens in the show, but in that scene where Amory Lorch and them, you know, converge on them and Bjorn is killed by the Lannisters that are chasing them, they're yelling their battle cries. And he yells, "Hot Pie!" in the book. I don't think he does that in the show, and it's just hilarious. Ever since then, people just loved Hot Pie. He also hears Arya yell "Winter Hell," and it's Winterfell, but he thinks it's Winter Hell,
Mm-hmm.
and so it starts to like pick away at. Wait, who are you? You know, wait, why did you say that? You know, and it's kind of fun. Anyway, so go Hot Pie. Hot Pie is a survivor, and I won't hear anything. I won't listen to any arguments to the contrary. Okay, question from Holly Waldron. Will Bran help the other Starks become the wargs they're supposed to be? No, I really don't think so. I really want them to, but I just really don't see that happening. I think we're getting a little more wolf action this season, but I don't think we're going to get a lot more. In fact, there was a ghost scene shot that was cut. So There was probably not much of a scene if it was cut. It was probably a really brief scene.
Unless there were 6 ghost scenes and it cut one of them. Wishful thinking.
Yeah, wishful thinking. Okay, last chance to get questions. We're going to do maybe 1 or 2 more. So if you have a question that you really want to get in, use Super Chat and make sure we see it. In the meantime, we have a question from Rebecca Androli. Thoughts on whether or not Septa Unil is actually dead? Zombie Septimus, is Qyburn going to raise her from the dead? That would be something. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think she's probably wanting to be dead. If she's not, keeping her alive would be, more quote-unquote fun for Sir Gregor there, the mountain that tortures, the mountain that's gross. And, yeah, I think that maybe that's Tyene gets handed off to I hope not.
Yeah.
We don't need to see that.
Hand it off to her, maybe.
Yeah, the way around. Yeah, right. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're going to address it. I kind of feel like they're just not going to bother showing us Septa Unil, and where they're going to kind of assume that he, she died eventually. They're not probably not treating her well, and eventually she would die. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay, let's see if we have any other ones pushed in here. I think I've answered all the ones we've set aside. So, okay. Let's see if I can see one here. Did Hot Pie get Arya's recipe? Good question. It sounds like he had the better recipe. He knew to brown the butter, and she said she didn't do that, so, yeah. Okay, from another one here. Does the 100 dragon glass daggers the Children of the Forest was giving the Night's Watch and the 99 almost babes of Craster have anything to do with how many White Walkers there are? Every time we see the White Walkers, there's just a small group of them. It seems like there's an ambiguous number of them. There were 4 of them at Bran's cave with Three-Eyed Crow, but in that vision where he sees the cloud and the winter moving and the white giants, there's more than 4. It's unclear how many there are, but there's at least 4. So I don't think there's 100 though. I don't think there's that many.
That does remind me, by the way, John might not necessarily be aware of this, but he might have considered the fact that giants are almost how the gate got open at the battle. At the wall?
That's a good point.
They're zombie giants.
They just stand on their each other's shoulders.
Well, they might have the strength to tear the gates open and die to arrows being shot at them or whatever.
Yeah, and they wouldn't feel pain. It wouldn't drive them mad. It wouldn't. Yeah, that's a good point. Those giants might have something to do with it, and there's a hint in the books from the lore. There's no evidence that they've been seen or anything like that. But from the legends, there's this thing of there's a reference to ice spiders, which can climb the wall. They could just walk right up it, apparently, with people on their backs or something, or White Walkers. Like that seems like some sort of other. That seems like some sort of epic fantasy movie. Ice spiders climbing a big ice wall, ridden by ice demons. But hey, we could be heading there.
Epic fantasy movie. There's no room for that here.
So we could entirely see that. Yes, a lot of people are definitely with us on the ice spiders. We see ice spiders, please. We see ice spiders. We see yes, ice spiders. A lot of people are pro the ice spiders. We also see the pie that was promised. Yeah, a lot of people talking about that. We've both inspired people to talk about pies and ice spiders. Those are the hot topics at the moment. So we've done our job. This has been a successful live stream. If we got people talking about ice spiders and hot pies, then we're winning. Okay, I think we'll call it a day. Thanks very much, everybody, for showing up. We really appreciate those of you who come to participate in the live chat. This really makes it great, makes it a lot better. This episode is going to be listened to by a lot of people, but you all who showed up in the comment box are really helping us. It's amazing, and it fills us with joy.
We're, once again, about 600 people watching here. That's only 10% of the way to 6,000, at which time we've committed to a 24-hour marathon podcast. So each of you tell 10 friends.
He's sort of joking, but he's not. I really would do a 24-hour stream if we could get 6,000 people in this. We're a long ways from that, but I really would do it. I'm up for a marathon. I could do it. We could pull it off. I don't know if YouTube would allow us to stream for 24 hours, but we would just keep opening new windows and telling everybody how to get there. So, yeah. Training in between episodes. We're training for building our stamina up to do a 24-hour stream. Okay, yeah, 24/7. Yeah, for charity. We would totally do it for charity. That's a good idea. We would do it for charity. 24-hour podcast of Crusader Kings 2. Yeah, it's a 24-hour gaming stream. Now that I've actually done, not without a stream, but Shay and I have played Crusader Kings 24 hours straight before. When it first came out, that was years ago. I don't even think we had a podcast then. But anyway, that is all for today. As I said at the beginning, we didn't do any credits, no Patreon shout-outs. No, that's just that we could get through this all quickly because, of course, the episode is tomorrow, and we want people to be able to listen to this. We want time for that to happen, and if this is as long as our normal episode, it's hard to pull that off. And again, I have to edit this episode after the fact. So thank you very much, everybody, for showing up. Thanks to Ashaya for running production. Behind the scenes is just important as what we're doing right here. And, of course, thanks to Sean for being here as well and helping with the questions and adding your great insight. Thanks. We'll see everybody very soon. Enjoy episode 3, and Valar rewatch us.